Consciously Creating Circumstances, written by George W. Plummer in 1937. Narrated by Richard Schaefer.
Chapter 10. Your Basic Attitude. Again, I'm going to ask you to be patient and to not skip over the details of technique. You have one more important idea to solidify before getting down to the fine points. That idea that I want to impress on you is this: act daily in full faith that your basic thought form is working out. Perhaps that does not sound so terribly important, but let me assure you that it is. It would be easy here to give you a long list of don'ts in the use of thought forms, but instead, for the time being, we shall concentrate on one big do, and we may find that, by inference, it will provide all the don'ts. Now read or listen to this carefully. The degree of success which you enjoy in using thought power will correspond exactly with the degree to which your habitual, daily attitude towards life is constructive. Why? Because your habitual, daily attitude towards life reflects your real underlying thought form. If it is constructive, your results will be so, and vice versa. By way of example, consider what would happen if a drop of white paint were mixed with a whole tube of black paint. What would you have? Black paint, of course. Now suppose a man has a head full of black thoughts. And suppose that by chance he let one little white thought into it. Obviously, his head would still be full of black thoughts. Going still further, if over a period of years a man has poured a stream of black thoughts into the universal and then suddenly introduces one little white thought, the universal remains, to him, a sea of black. These black thoughts need not be what we usually call evil ones. They can just be careless ones, or doubtful, or hesitant, or unhappy, and distrustful. Such a man need not expect one constructive thought form at once to undo the harms of millions of destructive thought forms he has consciously or otherwise impressed on the universal. Such a man will require perhaps years of effort to nullify his previous ignorant actions. This seems like hard lines, in a way, yet we may be sure, on the other hand, that once this has been accomplished, the evil has been put behind forever. Or, as some say, our sins have been forgiven. Now let us consider the man of a good heart, jolly, cheerful, and optimistic by nature. His basic thought forms of life is constructive and has been for years. To him, by contrast with the pessimist, the universal is white, and even his occasional weak moment will not appreciably discolor it. So, to the optimistic man, things come easily. But for the pessimistic man, life is a burden. You have noticed that yourself, I am sure, speaking by and large. And here is the scientific, convincing reason for that fact which you have observed. The optimistic, good-expecting man creates good conditions for himself by his daily, inherent thought forms. Unconscious, to be sure, but nevertheless somewhat effective. And the pessimistic individual creates his own bad conditions by a like process. So we see that so-called good and evil are manifestations of exactly the same law, differently applied, but brought about by one and the same power without discrimination. Only in the long run good prevails over evil, or evolution would be unthinkable. Now, if you will analyze the foregoing remarks, you will discover an apparent paradox. We said in one breath that the universal is white to one man, and then we say that to another it is black. Yet, there can be but one universal, or infinite. How can it be both black and white? The answer lies in the fact that while the universal does not itself change, the individual's perception of it varies all the way from pure white to pure black, or from pure good to pure bad. Then are we to say that the universal is different to different men? My friends, that is exactly what we are to say. Now let's drop the term universal for the time being and use a word that means universal: God. Let us try to remain cool and consider this idea on its own merits. God is different to different men, for man creates his own conception of God. One of the most penetrating truths of religion was voiced by an avowed critic of it. You have heard, no doubt, the saying that an honest man is the noblest work of God. Robert Ingersoll very cleverly, if cynically, reversed that saying, and in doing so, pointed out to mental scientists what really sums up their entire creed. He said, "An honest God is the noblest work of man." Think that over. If you have followed these discussions carefully, you must see that in a sense each man does create his own God. I say it with all due reverence, for you understand that this means that he decides for himself what God shall be to him, or, if you prefer, what the universal mind shall do for him. Do you wonder that theologians for centuries have fought over definitions of God? How could they possibly have agreed amongst themselves, since they differed in their own natures from each other? However, we need not pause over their disputes. All we need to know is that each of us has the almost miraculous power of creating our own individual conception of God. Do we say that He is just? And do we act and speak daily as though we believe Him just? Then He is just. Do we believe that He will supply us with all good things? And do we act daily as though we believe that? Then He does supply us with all good things. Do we believe that He will answer a constructive thought form by bringing it to pass? And do we act daily as though we believe it? Then He does bring it to pass. That is how simple it is. And that is the meaning of the scriptural warning that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Not what he says he thinks, not what he thinks occasionally when he remembers to think it, but what he thinketh in his heart, daily, habitual, and without reserve. That is what he is in the world of thought, and that is what he becomes in the objective world. The mental scientist who is alive to his task will, curiously enough, exhibit to the world a perfect bevy of the homely virtues. He will be anything but spectacular in his actions, and perhaps seem even stupid to some bright minds because he is not continually scheming to advance his interests. But how incredibly superior such a mental scientist! That one great lesson he has learned leads him to leave ways and means to the Universal Ways and Means Committee, once he has decided the direction and manner in which that power shall manifest in his life. This does not mean that he sits back and does nothing. Far from it. He will be decidedly active in discharging his duties and doing well at the things at hand. But the greatest master who has yet appeared to us said, "Take no anxious thought for the morrow." And the mental scientist lives strictly by that rule. Longfellow has well summed up his thought in an immortal stanza in his Psalm of Life. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present. Heart within and God o'erhead. The worker in thought forms leaves to others all worry as to whether he will get his just reward. He knows that he will. He radiates good cheer and confidence, not because some pep-up artist has told him to, but because he cannot be any other way. He knows that life has a real meaning, and he is eager to enter its experiences on the credit side of his ledger. He seeks every opportunity to enlarge the useful sphere of those experiences, both with ideas and with people. He knows that love and beauty walk hand in hand down the byways of life as twin agents of the universal mind, and he finds them equally in the song of a lark or the glad cry of a child, in a lump of soft clay or a dancing sunbeam, in the caress of a loved one or the smile of a friend. Such a person who has come to atonement, at-one-ment, with the universal mind, and who understands its infinite bounty, truly inhabits a world of the wondrous, far surpassing wealth unspoken. Does anyone doubt that such a world is indeed possible? It awaits only the will to find it, to open the door. In short, to use the key which has already been placed in your hands. It requires mainly the formation of your basic thought form, and then living your life in full confidence that this thought form is working out in your life. Though you hear countless talks on this subject and read all the books ever written about it, you will never be closer to the essence of the idea than you are right now. Many further details need consideration, that is, the vital essence of the idea.